I'm Dr. Joseph Camo, Associate Professor of Sociology at Georgia Southwestern State University, and today I'm going to talk about socioeconomic status. Socioeconomic status is a term that sociologists use to sort of identify where people rate in comparison to other people in terms of their economic and social position. It's kind of related to the idea of social stratification. Now, when we look at socioeconomic status, there tend to be three key variables we use to measure or identify that: income, education, and occupation. Now, all these variables are connected, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But first, let's talk about how we measure them and define them. Now, income as a measure has to do with how much a person earns based on their occupation or however they earn an income. It is worth noting, however, that from a socioeconomic perspective, net worth or wealth would be a better measure, and if that's available, sociologists will try to use it. The tricky thing is it's hard to capture that. If you ask someone, what's your net worth? They might not be able to tell you right off the cuff. They might have to get a calculator, get out their investments and their debts and figure that out. So unless you're doing research where you have tax filing information or some sort of documented information about a person's net worth and assets, you're not going to be able to use wealth or net worth as a variable. So income isn't an ideal measure. Certainly wealth or net worth would be better, but we do tend to use that because it's easier data to collect. If you ask someone their income, they're much more likely to be able to answer that on a survey. Now, the next one is education, which I think we're all familiar with. This is going to school and earning some sort of degree or diploma. Now, the way sociologists tend to measure this is by degree or certificate thresholds. While you could go with numbers of years of education, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the more common way to measure this has to do with high school or equivalency, or college completion, or having a graduate degree. Because those points in your education, having a degree, a college degree, is much more meaningful than the difference between 7 or 8 years in education. The third thing we look at is occupation. Now, when we look at occupation, there is actually a way to measure that quantitatively. Sociologists use something called an occupational prestige score when they're trying to measure that. Now, I will note, however, that sociologists don't usually use this variable. In fact, you only really see it if the study itself really needs to know how someone's occupation comes into play. But occupation is a key part of someone's socioeconomic status. Now, these three things often tend to correlate. In fact, sociologists will sometimes call that a status consistency, that if someone has a high level of income, they probably also tend to have a higher level of education and a more prestigious career. And there's a correlation between them, and it's pretty intuitive when you think about it. A higher status career tends to require higher levels of education. And if you have that higher status career built on that higher level of education, you probably have a higher income. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to this. You have someone with a high school education who builds a business and becomes quite wealthy without a high level of education, but they may be a high status career business owner and very wealthy. You have other examples where there might be inconsistencies in this. Another example would be if you had someone who's teaching classes as an adjunct instructor. They may have a master's degree or a PhD, high level of education, to be teaching at a college level, and they have what is, at least at surface level, a pretty respected occupation. They are teaching at a university. But if they're adjuncts, what they're doing is they're teaching on a contract basis. They might be making $3,000 or $4,000 to teach one course for one semester. And if they're just doing it at a part-time level, the overall level of income is actually not terribly high. There's probably other examples you could think of, but anytime you have a situation where someone rates high on one or two of these measures of socioeconomic status, income, education, and occupation, but they don't rate high in another one, we sometimes call that a status inconsistency. So in sum, socioeconomic status is a measure or a concept that sociologists use to look at how people rate with other people in terms of their social and economic position. Sometimes we call that SES for short, socioeconomic status. And there are three key variables we use when we're measuring that: income or wealth if you have access to that data, education, and occupation. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to click like and comment below and subscribe to the Sociology Professor YouTube channel.